The phone call lasted 11 minutes. Danielle knew because she looked at the screen when it ended. The way you look at a clock after something significant, needing the concrete fact of time to anchor you back into the world. 11 minutes. It wasn't long. It wasn't the kind of conversation that repairs anything, or resolves anything, or earns anything back. It was just a mother and her daughter talking carefully around the edges of something too large to approach directly on a Wednesday afternoon with no warning and no plan. But it was real. And for Danielle, sitting in her childhood bedroom in her mother's house in Beaumont, with the ceiling fan clicking overhead and the late afternoon light going gold through the curtains, real was the only currency she had left. She set the phone down on the bed beside her, and she sat with the echo of Imani's voice. 9 years old, careful, measured in the way children become measured when they have learned that certain feelings, expressed too openly, don't always land somewhere safe. Her daughter had answered her questions, had responded when spoken to, had even laughed once, briefly, at something Danielle said about a memory from when Imani was very small. And the sound of that laugh had gone through Danielle like something physical, like a key turning in a lock she had forgotten was still there. But underneath all of it, threaded through every exchange, was something Danielle recognized because she had put it there. Distance. The careful, self-protective distance of a child who has been left by someone they loved completely and has had to learn, at 9 years old, and that love and permanence are not the same thing. Danielle had done that. Not the distance itself. She hadn't created that in Imani with any kind of intent, but the conditions for it, the situation that required it, the absence that made it necessary. She sat with that for a long time after the call ended, not running from it, not managing it, just sitting with it, the way you sit with something true that you have been too afraid to look at directly for 2 years and are now, finally, out of room to avoid. Her mother knocked on the door that evening and came in without waiting for an answer, which was her mother's way, had always been her mother's way, the particular brand of love that doesn't ask permission because it has decided that presence matters more than protocol. Gloria Carter was 61 years old, retired from 28 years of teaching 4th grade, and in possession of the specific kind of clarity that comes from having watched enough people make enough mistakes to stop being surprised by any of them. She was a small woman who took up an enormous amount of space in every room she walked into, and she sat on the edge of Danielle's bed with the ease of someone who had sat on that same edge 100 times before and would sit on it 100 times more. She looked at her daughter. Danielle looked back. "I called Imani today," Danielle said. "I know," her mother said. "I could hear you. She was careful with me. She's protecting herself. She's 9. Children learn what they need to learn," her mother said, without judgment, without softness either. A just truth delivered the way Gloria Carter delivered everything, directly, with full eye contact, wrapped in enough love to make it survivable. Danielle looked at the ceiling. "I don't know how to fix this, Mama." "No," her mother said. "You don't. Not yet. That's not particularly comforting. It's not meant to be comforting. It's meant to be accurate." Her mother reached over and covered Danielle's hand with hers. "You didn't break this in a day. You're not going to fix it in one either. But you called. That's the first real thing you've done in 2 years. Hold on to that." Danielle turned her hand over and held her mother's. The ceiling fan clicked. The light went from gold to grey outside the window. And somewhere in that ordinary quiet, something in Danielle that had been braced for impact since the day she walked out of that church, finally, fractionally let down its guard. She was not okay. She was not on the other side of anything. She had no plan and no clarity and no particular reason to believe that the people she had hurt most would ever fully let her back in. But she was here. She was present. She was no longer running. And that, her mother was right, was the first real thing. The decision to go back to Houston didn't happen in a single moment. It accumulated. Over the following 2 weeks in Beaumont, Danielle had the kind of time she had not had in years, Unstructured, unscheduled, stripped of the particular busyness she had used to keep herself from having to be fully present in her own life. No events, no obligations, and no version of herself to perform for anyone. Just her and her mother, and the quiet house, and the long mornings, and the slow afternoons, and all the space that created for thinking. She thought about her children constantly, not the way she had thought about them before, in the careful, contained way that let her acknowledge them without letting the feeling go all the way through, but fully. The way you think about something when you stop rationing your own grief around it. She thought about the specific texture of who they were. Imani, her oldest, her daughter who had arrived in the world with an expression of absolute assessment, like she was sizing up what she had gotten herself into and reserving judgment, who had grown into a child of remarkable precision, precise in her language, precise in her feelings, precise in the way she decided who she was going to trust and how much, who had her grandmother's directness and her father's steadiness, and something entirely her own that Danielle had always privately thought was the most interesting thing in any room. Jordan, her son, her younger one, who was made of a completely different material. All warmth and impulse and laughter that came from his whole body, who had learned to read later than his classmates and cried about it in private because he had already decided that struggling at things wasn't something he wanted witnesses for, who drew pictures of his family with the kind of earnest hope that makes you want to be better than you are. She had left them. She sat with that, really sat with it without the buffer of justification, and let herself feel the full weight of what that meant. On not just what it had cost her, what it had cost them. A 9-year-old learning to protect herself from her own mother, a 7-year-old sleeping with the light on. She cried about it in a way she hadn't let herself cry about anything in 2 years. Not the composed, managed tears of someone maintaining their dignity in a difficult moment. The other kind. The kind that comes from somewhere below the place you can control it, that takes everything with it when it goes. Her mother heard her through the wall and did not come in, because Gloria Carter understood from a lifetime of watching people heal that some crying needs to be witnessed and some crying needs to be private, and she had always known the difference. Danielle cried until she was empty. And then she washed her face and went to the kitchen and made herself a cup of tea and sat at her mother's kitchen table at 2 a.m. and started, slowly, imperfectly, without any clear map, to think about what came next. Not in the big, sweeping way she had always approached her own life before. Not the fantasy version, the curated idea of what things would look like once she arrived somewhere better. The small version, the next real thing. She called Marcus on a Thursday morning 3 weeks after the wedding. She had thought about what she was going to say for days, had drafted it in her head in different versions, had rehearsed the opening sentence so many times it had lost all meaning and she'd had to throw it out and decide to just speak. He answered on the 3rd ring. Danielle. Just her name. No warmth and no coldness. The voice of a man who had prepared himself for this call at some point and was now simply receiving it. Marcus. She paused. Thank you for answering. The kids are fine, he said, not harshly, just leading with the information he assumed she needed. I know, I talked to Imani last week. She paused again. I want to talk to you. Not about logistics, I want to talk to you. Silence on his end, not the hostile kind, the thinking kind. All right, he said finally. I'm coming back to Houston. I thought, if you were willing, we could talk in person. About the kids, about what I want to try to do going forward. She stopped herself from filling the silence with more words, which was her instinct and also exactly the wrong thing to do. Marcus was quiet for what felt like a long time. Plus, I'm not going to make this easy for you, he said. I'm not asking you to. The kids come first. Everything you want has to work around what's right for them, not what makes you feel better. Yes, she said. I understand that. Another pause. Come on a Saturday, he said. The kids will be at my mother's. We can just talk. Okay. Danielle? Yeah. I don't know what I'm going to feel when I see you. I want you to know that going in, I'm not going to perform something for you. Whatever I feel is what you're going to get. That's fair, she said. It was more than fair. It was more grace than she had given him on that Tuesday evening 2 years ago, when she had sat across from him with her decision already made and her bags already half-packed in her mind. She knew that. She drove back to Houston on a Friday. She had found a short-term rental, a small apartment in a neighborhood she didn't know well, far enough from her old life to feel neutral, close enough to the kids' school to be accessible when that became possible. It was nothing like the world she had been living in for the past 2 years. Modest, functional, quiet in a way that felt earned, rather than empty. She unpacked slowly. She put a photograph of Imani and Jordan on the kitchen counter, one she had carried in her wallet even through everything. A photo from Jordan's 5th birthday, both of them laughing at something off camera, Imani with her arm around her brother's shoulders with the proprietary affection of an older sibling who has decided this person belongs to her. She looked at that photo for a long time. Then she put her empty suitcase under the bed and went to get groceries and came back and made herself dinner and sat at her small kitchen table alone in her small apartment in the city she had left, like she was on fire. She was back. Not triumphantly, not with a plan that had all the pieces in place, just back. Present tense. No filter. The meeting with Marcus happened on a Saturday morning in late May. She arrived at the house, her old house, the house she had lived in for 7 years, the house where her children had been born into and grown into the people they currently were, and she sat in her car outside it for 4 full minutes before she got out. It looked the same. Mostly. Sure, Marcus had painted the front door a different colour. A deep navy where it had been black before. And there were flowers in the beds along the front walk that hadn't been there when she left. Small things, the house reclaiming itself in her absence, becoming something slightly different, moving on without her in the small cosmetic ways that felt, looking at them from a parked car on a Saturday morning, quietly enormous. She got out. She knocked on the door of the house she used to have a key to. Marcus opened it. He looked different in ways she hadn't expected and the same in ways she had. He had lost some weight, but not in the hollowed-out way of someone not taking care of themselves. In the way of someone who had started running, whose body had reorganized itself around a new discipline. He looked tired in the eyes but steady underneath it, like a man who had been through something and was on the other side of it, not unaffected, but not defeated either. He looked at her. She looked at him. "Come in," he said. She walked through the front door of her old house. It hit her immediately, the specific smell of it, the particular quality of the light in the front hallway, the sound the floor made under her feet, the way the house felt like a physical record of years of shared life, every corner of it storing something she recognized. The children's drawings were still on the refrigerator. Different ones now. Newer work, Jordan's lines more confident, Imani's more detailed, but pinned in the same arrangement, held by the same collection of mismatched magnets she had accumulated over years. As she stood in the kitchen and felt the weight of everything that had happened in it, Marcus put coffee on. They sat across from each other at the same table where everything had ended. He didn't offer pleasantries. That wasn't Marcus's way. He had always moved directly to the real thing once a conversation required it, and he moved there now. "What do you want, Danielle?" "I want to be in my children's lives," she said. "Properly. Not a phone call once a week. Not a visitor they see occasionally. I want to be their mother in a real way." "You've been their mother this whole time," he said. "You just haven't been here." She didn't flinch from that. I know. Imani has had one conversation with you in the past 4 months that lasted more than 3 minutes. I know that too. Jordan asked me last month if you had a new family." Marcus's voice stayed level, but something in his jaw shifted. "He asked me if that was why you didn't come back. He wanted to know if you had different kids, now that you liked better." The silence that followed that was the heaviest thing in the room. Danielle held it. She didn't cry in front of Marcus. Not because she wasn't feeling it, she was feeling it in every part of her. But because this wasn't her moment to be comforted. This was her moment to receive information, to be present for the reality of what her absence had produced in a 7-year-old who was trying to build a narrative around something that made no sense to him. What did you tell him?" she asked. "I told him the truth," Marcus said. "That you loved him, that you were going through something hard, that it had nothing to do with him." He looked at her steadily. "I've been telling them that for 2 years, even when I didn't entirely believe it myself, because they needed to hear it, and I wasn't going to let them grow up thinking they were the reason their mother left." Danielle looked at this man across the table. This man she had left because she decided his love wasn't enough. This man who had spent 2 years protecting their children from the full weight of what she had done, because he understood better than she had that the kids came first regardless of what was happening between the adults. She thought about what it had cost him to do that, the daily discipline of it, had keeping his own pain contained enough that it didn't seep into the way he spoke about her to their children. Choosing, over and over, to give them a version of their mother that left room for her to be something good, even when she wasn't showing up as anything good at all. "Marcus," she said, and then stopped, because what she wanted to say, "I'm sorry, I know that's not enough, I understand now what you were and what I walked away from," felt inadequate in a way that words don't survive intact. "You don't have to say it," he said quietly. "I need to. I know you do, but I need you to understand something first." He set his coffee cup down. "I'm not sitting here waiting for an apology. I stopped needing one a while ago. What I need, what the kids need, Michelle, is not words, it's consistency. It's showing up. It's being the thing you say you're going to be week after week, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's hard, even when there's no one watching to give you credit for it." He looked at her. "Can you do that? Because if you can't, if this is something you're feeling right now that's going to wear off when it gets difficult, then I need you to leave this alone, because they have finally gotten to a place where they're okay. And I will not let them be disrupted by a version of you that's here for 3 months and then gone again." His voice never raised. That was the thing about Marcus. He never needed volume to make something land. "I can do that," Danielle said. "I hope so," he said. Not cruelly, not warmly, in the voice of a man who had been here before and was going to require proof. I'm going to need time to trust this," he said. "You start small, phone calls first, then a visit with both of them present, with me there. Then we see. Nothing moves faster than what the kids can handle. Imani's going to be the one I watch. She's the one who's going to tell me how this is actually going, because she won't pretend." "I know," Danielle said. "I know she won't." She almost smiled at that. The particular pride of a mother who recognizes her own qualities in her child, even the difficult ones. Marcus saw it. He didn't smile back, but something in his expression acknowledged it. They talked for another hour and a half, not warmly, not as people who were rebuilding something between them. That wasn't what this was, and neither of them pretended it was. But as two people who had made children together, and were now trying to figure out how to organize their lives around those children in a way that actually worked. When Danielle left, she stood at the front door for a moment. "Thank you," she said, "for everything you've done for them. I know you didn't have to do it the way you did it, the things you've protected them from. I know what that cost." Marcus looked at her. "They're my kids," he said simply, and closed the door. She sat in her car for a long time before she started the engine. The first visit with the children happened on a Sunday afternoon 3 weeks later. Marcus had told them Danielle was coming. He had done it the night before. Not with drama, not with build-up, just matter-of-factly, the way he handled most things. And telling them their mother was going to stop by tomorrow, and they were going to spend some time with her. Jordan had been immediately, transparently excited in the way that only 7-year-olds can be. All of his feelings visible on his face at once. Joy and nervousness and relief, tumbling together without any of the self-consciousness that comes later. He had asked if he could show her his new drawings. He had asked if she was going to stay for dinner. He had asked 3 separate questions about what she looked like now, as if she might have become unrecognizable. Imani had said, "Okay," and gone back to what she was doing. Marcus had watched his daughter absorb the information and walk away with it, and he had felt the familiar complicated ache of seeing a 9-year-old exercise that much protective restraint. He had knocked on her door that evening. Imani was at her desk doing homework with the particular concentrated frown she got when she was working on something that required her full attention. She looked up. "You okay?" Marcus asked. "Yes." He sat on the edge of her bed. "You can feel whatever you feel about tomorrow. You don't have to be anything." Imani looked at him for a moment, with those eyes that had always seen more than seemed reasonable for their age. "What if I'm not sure what I feel?" she asked. "Then you don't have to be sure. You just have to show up and see what happens." She looked back at her homework. "Okay," she said. He kissed the top of her head and left her to it. Danielle arrived on Sunday at 2:00. She had changed outfits 3 times. She had told herself to stop. She had changed again anyway. As she arrived in something simple and unthreatening. Jeans, a soft top, low shoes, her hair natural and loose in the way her daughter had always liked it, though she told herself she wasn't calculating that. She knocked. Marcus opened the door and stepped aside without ceremony. Jordan appeared from around the corner like a small rocket and stopped 3 feet in front of her, vibrating with the effort of having told himself to be cool about this, a plan that had lasted approximately 4 seconds. "Hi," he said. "Hi, baby," Danielle said, and Jordan covered the remaining 3 feet at full speed and crashed into her, wrapping both arms around her waist and pressing his face into her side, and Danielle bent over him and held him with both arms and closed her eyes and let herself have it. The specific physical reality of her child. The weight and warmth of him, the smell of his hair, the particular way he held on with his whole body when he hugged. Nothing held back, everything offered. She held him for a long time. When they separated, Jordan looked up at her with his face completely open. "I have new drawings," he said. "A lot of them. Do you want to see?" "I want to see all of them," she said. And Jordan took her by the hand and pulled her toward the kitchen table where a stack of drawings had been arranged with the careful presentation of someone who had been preparing this exhibition for longer than 1 day. Danielle let herself be pulled. She glanced toward the hallway. Imani was standing at the entrance to the living room, not close, not far, just standing there, watching. Her arms loosely crossed in a posture that was so unmistakably her grandmother's that it stopped Danielle's breath for a second. Their eyes met. Danielle didn't move toward her. She had decided, had thought hard about this, that she was not going to push Imani, was not going to require a warmth that her daughter was not ready to give, was not going to make this visit about her own need to be forgiven. "Hey, Imani," she said simply. "Hi," Imani said. And that was it. For now. Just that. But her daughter didn't leave the room either. She drifted gradually to the kitchen table where Jordan was spreading drawings out with theatrical commentary, and she sat down at the far end of the table and picked up a book, and she did not participate in the conversation, but she was there, present, and watching from a distance that she was managing herself, on her own terms. Danielle understood that for exactly what it was, not rejection, testing, and she could live with being tested. She had earned being tested. She was going to show up and keep showing up and let time and consistency do what speeches and apologies could never do. They spent 2.5 hours at that table. Jordan narrated every drawing in detail. Danielle asked questions that made him light up. Marcus sat nearby reading something, occasionally contributing a sentence, never manufacturing ease, but not disrupting what was building naturally either. At some point, Imani put her book down. She didn't announce it, didn't make a thing of it. She just started listening to what Jordan was saying, and then gradually started contributing. Correcting details Jordan had gotten wrong with the precision of an older sibling who cannot let inaccuracy stand, and then, before any of them had quite noticed it happening, she was in the conversation. Not warm, not effusive, but there. When Danielle was leaving, standing at the front door with her car keys in her hand, the afternoon having gone better than she had let herself hope for, and worse than she had secretly wanted. Imani appeared in the hallway. "Are you coming back?" she asked. The question was direct, carried the weight of a question that had been asked before in a different form, to an answer that had not held. Danielle looked at her daughter. "Yes," she said. "I'm coming back. Next Sunday. And the Sunday after that? And the one after that?" Imani studied her. "Okay," she said, and walked back down the hallway. Danielle got in her car. She drove 2 blocks. She pulled over. And she sat there for 10 minutes, with her hands on the steering wheel and her eyes closed, feeling everything she had no business feeling in the middle of a Sunday afternoon in a neighborhood she had once belonged to. Relief, grief, gratitude, shame, hope. All of it at once. All of it alive. The Sundays came, one after another. Danielle showing up at 2 o'clock. Danielle knocking on the door she no longer had a key to. Danielle sitting at that kitchen table or in that living room or at a park nearby, being present in the unspectacular necessary way that presence has to be when it's trying to rebuild something. She didn't perform. She had decided early on that performance was what had gotten her into all of this. The curated version. The self she showed people instead of the self she actually was. And she was done with it. She was going to be exactly what she was, including uncertain and imperfect, and in the middle of figuring things out, because her children deserved the real version of her, even if the real version was messier than the one she had been presenting. Jordan adapted quickly. Children his age are built for forgiveness in a way that is both beautiful and heartbreaking. Beautiful because of the generosity of it. Heartbreaking because it can be taken advantage of so easily. Within 3 visits, he was treating her like a continuous presence in his life again, updating her on things that had happened in the week between visits, as if she had context for them, bringing her into his world with both hands. Imani moved more slowly, which was exactly right. Or which was exactly what Imani had always done with everything that mattered. Held it at a careful distance until she understood it well enough to let it in. Danielle had watched her do this with a new teacher she ended up loving, with a girl at school who became her closest friend, with the world in general, which Imani approached with the discernment of someone who has decided that her trust is a finite resource and she intends to allocate it carefully. Danielle was patient, not as a strategy, not because she had calculated that patience was the right move, but because she genuinely understood for the first time that what she owed her daughter was not an apology, though she gave one carefully on the 4th Sunday without expectation of a response. But time. Just time. The accumulated evidence of a mother who showed up. On the 6th Sunday, Imani asked if they could go for a walk. Just the 2 of them. Danielle said yes so quickly that Imani almost smiled. They walked around the neighborhood for 40 minutes. Imani talked about school, a project she was doing, a girl in her class who had been difficult, a book she was reading that she thought was better than the one it was compared to on the back cover. She talked about the things that were real and present in her life, and she talked about them to her mother. And Danielle listened with everything she had and asked questions and did not try to insert herself into the narrative as anything other than an interested party. Toward the end of the walk, Imani said something that Danielle would return to for a long time afterward. They were walking past the small park at the end of the block, the one with the old metal swings that made a specific sound in the wind. And Imani was quiet for a moment, and then she said, without looking up, "I was really angry at you." "I know," Danielle said. "I'm still a little angry." "That's okay. But I also—" Imani stopped, thought. "I also missed you. Like at the same time. And that was confusing, because I didn't want to miss you when I was angry. It felt like they shouldn't both be true at once." Danielle looked at her daughter. This 9-year-old, who was articulating with more precision than most adults manage the central emotional complexity of loving someone who has hurt you. "They can both be true at once," Danielle said. "That's not confusion. That's just how it actually is." Imani considered this. Okay," she said. and kept walking. Danielle kept pace beside her and did not reach for her hand. Not yet. She was going to let Imani decide when that was. 2 weeks later, walking back from the park after a Sunday visit, Imani reached over and took her hand. She didn't say anything, she just held it. And Danielle held it back, and they walked the rest of the way home in the kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled because it is already full. Marcus watched all of this from a careful distance. He watched Danielle show up. He watched her be consistent. He watched her not push and not perform, and not turn every visit into something she needed credit for. He watched his daughter begin, slowly, on her own schedule, to thaw. He felt things about it that were complicated, and that he was honest with himself about in the Thursday sessions that had become one of the more important hours of his week. He felt relief, genuine, uncomplicated relief that his children were going to have their mother in their lives in a real way. He felt something else underneath that, harder to name. Not jealousy exactly. Not resentment. More like the particular bittersweet quality of watching someone become, late, the person they should have been earlier. Knowing that the version of Danielle who was showing up on these Sundays, present, real, unperforming, was a version that had always been available, had been in there the whole time, and had required the complete collapse of everything she had chased to be excavated. He sat with that. He didn't share it with the kids. He didn't let it show in the way he spoke to Danielle during handoffs. He was professional and civil, and eventually, gradually, something approaching cordial. Because the kids were watching how he treated her. And the way a father treats the mother of his children, even a mother who left, even one who caused genuine damage, tells those children something about what love looks like at its best and worst. Tells them something about dignity and grace under pressure. Tells them something about who their father decided to be when the easier choice was bitterness. He had decided a long time ago that he was not going to give them bitterness. He was going to give them the example of a man who got hurt and got up and kept choosing well anyway. He was going to give them that even when it cost him something. And it still sometimes cost him something. He was running one morning, 6 miles the usual route, when his phone buzzed with a news alert that stopped him mid-stride. Not a news story. A social media notification from someone he barely knew who had tagged him in something. He stood on the sidewalk in the early morning with his chest heaving and read it. Ethan Caldwell was engaged, not to Danielle, to someone else. A woman Marcus had never heard of. The announcement had gone out through the kind of channels that announcements from people like Ethan Caldwell go out through. Society pages, business publications, the soft machinery of a certain social world. Marcus stood on the sidewalk for a moment. He thought about Danielle. He thought about telling her, and then thought about whether that was his information to carry. He decided it wasn't. He put his phone in his pocket and finished his run. Danielle found out on her own, the way things find you when you are no longer running from them. Quietly, without drama, on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday. She was at a coffee shop near her apartment, working on something she had been slowly rebuilding. A small business idea she had carried in her back pocket for years, and was finally giving actual time to. She had her laptop open and her coffee getting cold beside it, and she was in the specific focused state of someone doing real work, not performing productivity, but actually building something. Her phone buzzed. A message from a woman she had known in Ethan's circle, not a close friend, and more of an acquaintance from that season of her life, with a link and a single line. Thought you should hear it from someone you know, rather than just stumble across it. She opened the link. She read it. She set her phone face down on the table. She sat there for a moment. And then she picked her phone back up and turned it face down again. And she went back to her laptop, and she kept working. Not because she didn't feel anything, she felt things. A residue of something was shh. Not love, not quite grief, but the specific ache of a chapter that closed in the worst possible way and had apparently now fully moved on without her. She felt it, and she let it be what it was. She didn't call anyone. She didn't spiral. She finished what she was working on, packed up her things, and drove to the grocery store. And she bought what she needed for the week, and she went home and put everything away and made dinner and called Jordan to ask about his day and listened to 20 minutes of commentary about something that had happened at recess that involved a disputed set of rules for a game she barely understood. She laughed. Genuinely. Without effort. She was okay. Not because Ethan's engagement didn't land, but because she had been doing the slow, unglamorous work of building something real for 4 months now, and real things are sturdier than they look. The ground she was standing on was different ground than the ground she had been standing on a year ago, harder to knock her off of. She was still building, but she was standing. And then came the evening that changed the texture of everything again. It was a Thursday in July. Far hot the way Houston is hot in July. The specific heavy heat that makes the air feel like it has weight. Danielle was at her apartment, the fan on, the windows open in the hope of a breeze that wasn't coming. Her phone rang. She looked at the screen. Marcus. He didn't call her. They texted about logistics. He hadn't called her once in the 4 months since she'd come back. She answered. Marcus, is everything okay? Are the kids... The kids are fine, he said. They're both here. They're fine. A pause. I'm calling because something happened today and I thought you should know about it before... I just thought you should know. What happened? Another pause. Longer. Imani wrote something for school, an essay. Her teacher called me today because she wanted to ask permission to submit it to a district writing competition. He stopped. She read it to me over the phone. The teacher did. Because Imani had left it on her desk after school and the teacher... She said she had to call someone. Danielle's heart was doing something she couldn't quite name. What was it about? She asked. It was about you, Marcus said, quietly. It was about... She wrote about what it felt like when you left, and what it felt like when you came back, and what she decided to do with both of those things. Silence. Marcus, I'm not telling you to upset you, he said. I'm telling you because Imani asked me to tell you. She knows I'm calling. She asked me to tell you that she wrote it and that she wanted you to know it exists. She didn't ask me to read it to you. She said... He paused. She said she wants to read it to you, herself. The silence that followed that was the kind that takes up more space than words do. Okay, Danielle said. Barely. Sunday, Marcus said. Come Sunday. He hung up. Danielle sat in her apartment in the July heat for a long time. She thought about her daughter, 9 years old, who had taken everything she felt, the anger and the missing and the confusion, and the gradual hard-won decision to let someone back in, and turned it into something she wanted to put in front of the world. Who had asked her father to call her mother? Who had said she wanted to read it herself? Danielle thought about all the ways you can fail someone, and still, somehow, not lose them entirely. About the specific resilience of children who decide, against all available evidence, to remain open. About what it costs them to make that decision and what it requires of the people they make it for. She thought about Sunday. She thought about sitting across from her daughter and hearing in Imani's own precise, unsparing 9-year-old voice what all of this had looked like from the inside. She thought about whether she was ready for that. She decided she had to be, because Imani was ready. And Imani had been carrying this longer than Danielle had been carrying anything. The least she could do, the very least, was show up and listen. But what Danielle didn't know, what nobody in that house knew yet, so what Marcus wouldn't find out until Saturday morning when the school district called him back with news that nobody had anticipated, was that Imani's essay had already been read by someone other than the teacher. The district coordinator who had received it had forwarded it, with permission requests pending, to a program. A national program. One that worked with children who had experienced family disruption and used writing as a tool for processing and healing. And the woman who ran that program, a woman in Atlanta who had built it from nothing over 15 years, who had a reputation for finding the voices that needed to be heard and giving them the largest possible room, had read Imani's essay at 11 o'clock on a Friday night, and had called the school first thing Saturday morning. She wasn't calling about a competition. She was calling because she had read something written by a 9-year-old that had stopped her in her tracks in the way that only the rarest kind of truth does. And she had a question, not for the school, for Imani's mother. And that question, that phone call on a Saturday morning, that voice from Atlanta asking something nobody had asked yet, was about to send everything that Danielle had carefully, painfully built over the past 4 months in a direction that none of them had seen coming. Not Danielle, not Marcus, not even Imani, who had simply written the truth and set it down on a teacher's desk and walked home. Some things you put into the world not knowing what the world is going to do with them. Some truths travel further than the room you release them in. And sometimes the child you failed becomes the thing that changes everything. That's where this story is going. And if you think you know what happens next, you don't. Part 3 is coming, and nothing about it lands where you expect.